Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@usaprepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Jason's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at Genesis Communications Network. I'm Vincent Finelli. If you'd like to call in, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. No point in giving you any of the telephone listen lines because they are down across the board. Not just for USA Prepares, but it looks like for everybody. And from what I understand, there was a suit that brought them down. I don't know who, what, when, where, why, or how, but all I know is that's what happened. Genesis is not a party in the suit. But our listen lines are down. I'm sorry that I have no impact in bringing them back up. So for now, no telephone listen lines. And it's a shame because I understand that a lot of people listen to USA Prepares on their telephones through the listen lines. When they come back up, I'll let you know. But don't hold your breath. So you still can listen on the internet. You can listen at GCNlive.com. You can go to the archives on GCNlive.com. You can go to Republic Broadcasting Archives. You can listen live, tape delayed the next day on republicbroadcasting.org. You can download or listen on the Ron Gibson channel on YouTube. Just type in USA Prepares. Phil Hudok is with us, and if you'd like to listen to Phil Hudok on USA Prepares, you can just go to YouTube and type in USA Prepares, USA Prepares, space Phil, Phil, space Hudok, Hudok. And you'll find this broadcast of today and last Friday's broadcast. So if you'd like to do that, please do. Welcome, Phil Hudok.
Good morning, Vince. I'm excited. I don't need any drugs. I did my morning grapefruit juice, and I made my daily arrangements with the postmaster to pick up today's mail. I'm
now,
excited.
do you live in a remote part of West Virginia?
Yes, I do. It's the least populated county. Well, I think it's the second least populated, and it's actually the largest county east of the Mississippi River. And the biggest town, I don't even think, has 20,000 people. In West Virginia, we don't have any cities. They're really just glorified towns.
Yeah, our family bought a mountaintop farm, if you will, and it was about 33 acres, if I remember correctly. And we built a cabin on there, and it was so nice. It was so remote that the electric company only wanted to come up there once a quarter to read the meters. That's, when they had... really, they didn't... It took 15 minutes to get up the driveway. And the driveway was just 2 tracks wide. And if you had a large pickup truck, half the tire on the the cliffside would be off the driveway and be straight down a couple hundred feet. And so mid-sized pickup truck was about as big as you could get on our driveway. And Mrs. Finelli would not ride with me up the driveway. And it literally took one driver and another person watching to make sure that we didn't go off the edge and slide off the hill. I mean, do you live in a place like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I used to live in a suburb of Pittsburgh, but it was in West Virginia. And I'm looking out my window, and I can see for about 2 miles, and the only thing I see are 2 barns, some cows, a cat. That's about it. It's beautiful here. I wish everyone had the view I have. If I could bottle it and send it out, I would.
Yeah, there's nothing like that. There's nothing like the deer camping out under the front, the front porch There's nothing like them sleeping and being at peace and at home on the property. And there's nothing like the morning dew and looking out and just the peace and quiet and not seeing the nonstop movement and hearing the noise of dense populations. It's really wonderful. And
well,
I think our tax bill.
Let me put it this way. I can hunt by just opening the window.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And that's hard for people to comprehend. You don't have to camp out and go in a tree stand. It's all right there. I think our tax bill for the year, the real estate taxes, I think was $26 or $33 for the year.
Yeah.
But the well was 508 feet deep.
Oh my! I've never heard of a well that deep.
Yeah, it was an expensive well, and we only got 1 gallon a minute. So you had to plan everything. Literally had to plan everything. The water column in the well pipe, because it was so deep, I think weighed just the water in the pipe. Without the pipe was 800 pounds. It was really, really heavy. So it requires a lot of planning and a lot of thinking, and you just can't run the water just as much as you want, at least where we were, because we were on top of the mountain. And so it was way down. And we were lucky to get 1 gallon a minute, because not everybody even had that. So, but it was remote, and it was wonderful. And so I miss the mountains of West Virginia. So, Phil, Peace 2020, your website is hudok.info. And it sounds to me like where you live is a place where you have freedom, because there aren't too many people telling you what to do. At least they can't see you. And exactly. I think you'd like to spread that. I think you'd like to spread that to the entire country, that kind of a feeling, the same kind of feeling. Well, we almost have it here. It's not quite as nice here because our nearest neighbor's a mile away, not 2 miles away.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was at one point on the planning commission for the county, and where I live, there's no zoning. And back when I was on the planning commission, and it's good to plan, it really is. But there was a push for countywide zoning, and the planning commission, fortunately, were people who understand that the people that live out, the reason they live out is because they don't want to be controlled. So we were such a stick in the side of the county commission that they actually disbanded the entire county commission rather than have someone who was sticking up for the people's rights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a town of about 100 people. There are 100 post office boxes, and half of them are available. So normally you go to the post office and you have to wait, get on a waiting list to get a post office box. Here you can almost pick the number you want. And there are only 100 people who live here. We are not incorporated. It's almost anything goes. It's almost the Wild West. And there's no zoning whatsoever, which means that you can build a nice house and a guy may buy the property next to yours and build a shack, or put in a container, shipping container, or may buy a storage shed, cut a couple windows in it, and build an outhouse, and the whole family may live in the storage shed. And that is we have those around us.
Phenomenal. That's
we
phenomenal.
Really do.
And the school where my wife and I taught, she's still there. She's teaching right now. But imagine a school that's a K through 12 public school, and it only has 37 students. 37.
Now
no locks on the lockers, no vending machines. It's a throwback to the 50s. And that's where I ended up teaching after I was actually fired from my teaching job after 25 years. I won in the state Supreme Court, and they had to reinstate me, but it was my peers who were upset that I didn't have to do what they did because they were compliant, and I had a conviction that I couldn't penalize students for not wearing a barcoded ID. I said, that's conditioning for a police state. So it was my peers who were upset with my level of freedom even though I wasn't encroaching on anything concerning them. You follow me? So I eventually,
I do.
Yeah,
I do follow you.
Transferred to a school that wanted me, a principal that understood me, and so when people say, "Well, you taught in a public school," and I know what public schools are like, it's terrible. Everyone should homeschool unless they had a unique arrangement that I had, and that was that my wife taught all the math, I taught all the science, 6 through 12. So basically, we were paid by the state to homeschool our children. Can't beat that.
Absolutely. That's really neat. And as you know, we talked about this privately. I was a public school teacher also.
Mm-hmm.
And I taught all grades K through master's degree and computer science at some level. And I got in a lot of trouble. My peers really disliked me because I would have the best parking spot in the whole school. And I said, well, you can have it too. You just have to get here, before 6 o'clock in the morning, because that's when I get here. And so why would I take the farthest away? I took the one next to my classroom. And they complained to the superintendent, like, who does he think he is? He takes the best parking space every day.
Wow.
One day, I had the keys to the school because I was running a computer manufacturing company within the school system. Mm-hmm. And one day, sheriff's deputy came in. He barged in, gun drawn, into my classroom. He had shaving cream on him. He had shorts on, and he wanted to know why I was in the school early in the morning, setting up for class. I set off the alarm that I didn't know they installed, and it rang in the sheriff's office. So, you and I just don't take direction very well. That's really the problem.
Oh, we need more people out of the box. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, getting out of the box, Bill of Peace 2020. How do we do it?
Well, there's something I'd like to share with your listeners first, and then we'll get into that. Do you mind me asking your age?
I'm 67, actually 68.
Okay, well, I'm just a little bit ahead of you. I'll be 70 in February, but people have the hardest time, and I know your listeners have experienced this, communicating with your family and your close friends. They are the hardest people to talk to. Me talking to a stranger is easier than me talking to my sister, because she thinks she knows me, but she doesn't know this side of me. You follow me? And so I just wanted to share something that my dad did when I was growing up. He was a person that could do anything, electricity, plumbing, carpentry, everything. And he listened to shortwave. When we grew up, there were 3 networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS. There was no internet. And he was a man who just wanted knowledge. He would listen to shortwave, and that's where you got the real scoop, or some publications. And so when I was in college, and I'm taking economics, and he's trying to tell me that we have a fraudulent money system, and that's not lining up with what my professor's telling me. I thought, well, my dad's a good carpenter, he's a good electrician and everything else, but, he's off on this one thing. And what he did was he got me 2 subscriptions to magazines, and I looked at those occasionally, and it was like, wait a minute. I read something that 2 months ago in a magazine that he gave me, and it came to pass. And it was like, whoa, what an awakening.
Mm-hmm. Now, we're going into a break, and I'd love to talk more about that when we come back. Phil Hudok, hudok.info. Phil Hudok's with us, hudok.info, HUDOK.info. Phil, you're talking about communications with family members, and I just want to share that I understand what you're talking about. I wanted to get our family, both sides, my wife's and ours, to prepare more and to understand what could happen and what was happening. So I decided to have an expo, because it was difficult to communicate what the realities were, because some people think that if things get bad and there's no food and you run out, just go to a restaurant. And, so I decided to have this Get Prepared Expo. We had 7 of them, and they were the largest in the country. But my family, not one member of my family even came. So you're absolutely correct. It is very difficult to communicate with family members about what the truth really is, because they've been brainwashed for so long. We just end up being the kooks of the family, because we see what the truth is compared to what the brainwashing has been. So I understand.
Yeah, if you can just sow some seeds that'll germinate later.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my dad did. He was a wise man, I found out.
I had a quick question for you. What were those 2 subscriptions that he bought for you?
One was Chuck Harder's For the People. I don't even think I think he's passed. And I also got the Spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, okay, very, very interesting, because our lives, even though we have never met, our lives parallel, because I had both of those too. And I was so impressed with Chuck Harder in those days, I drove down to Florida with my family to meet him. And I was looking all over for him, and I couldn't find him. I went to his hotel, and so I drove around. I found him at a McDonald's. I saw this great big guy in this big Pontiac, and he was in the drive-thru. And I walked up to him, and I said, "Are you Chuck Harder?" He said, "Yeah." So that was my meeting with Chuck Harder. I never really got a chance to talk to him. But for shortwave, I used to listen to John Statmiller, the Intel Report, the National Intel Report.
Oh, I did too. Yeah. Absolutely.
And he's a personal friend of ours, and he comes up here when he wants to decompress. So I was trained by Chuck Harder, the Spotlight, some of the greats, Tom Valentine, and others. And it looks like now we are carrying the mantle.
Someone has to, and you and John, you're providing really a life and death service, because some of these things that people need to know about are actually life and death issues.
So what do we do?
Well, the question at hand is, how do you interface lawfully with a big brother government system that is unlawful? You are inevitably forced to sacrifice lawful principles, or you have to support unlawful and ungodly programs. You're basically participating in your own demise, and I just couldn't do that. So, fortunately, in West Virginia, 3 men began something in 2015, and now 4 men and 1 woman have taken this to fruition, to arbitration, and it puts the government in default and dishonor, and we want a permanent injunction. This is permanent, for remedy and relief under a new contract. And we've been joined by 1,200 people who feel the same way. And there's a whistleblower that is in the news a lot. Some people say they know who he is, and some people lie and say they don't know who he is. But I look at this as 5 whistleblowers who have now been joined by 1,200 more whistleblowers to show that we have a government that's not serving the people. And I would like to play just about less than a 30-second audio clip here. This is Donald Trump.
In America, the people govern, the people rule, and the people are sovereign. I was elected not to take power, but to give power to the American people where it belongs.
Okay, this is a way, I hope, in the long run, that Trump can use to fulfill his campaign promise of sovereignty to the people.
Yeah, we're going to break, and when we come back, would you define for us sovereignty for the people? What does that mean? What are the benefits? What are the risks, if any? Phil Hudok, Hudok.info. Hudok.info. Phil Hudok is with us. And Phil, sovereignty, you mentioned that. What is it?
Well, that defines really where we are today. I'll speak of 2 different kinds of sovereignty. Political sovereignty should be the ability for you to pursue happiness as long as you don't harm person or property. In other words, you're free other than doing damage of some type, whereas we are now in policy land where we are micromanaged politically, and the government now determines how you feel and actually can interface with you and cause you harm based on what they say you feel. It's totally upside down because spiritual sovereignty only exists with God. We don't have spiritual sovereignty. I am beholding to my Creator. So my Creator is going to judge my heart and my thoughts and all those things. When government does that, they usurp God. So government has actually taken the place of what should be only in the realm of creation under the Creator, you see. So there's political sovereignty. Yes, you can have that. You should be free of control unless you do harm to person or property.
So you're talking about zoning where the government tells you what you can build, what color you can build it, how far set back from the property lines, how tall, the style, whether you can have a solar system or not, whether you are required to have a permit by the state that you have to pay for in order to operate your vehicle on the road. We're talking about it's endless. And Hillary Clinton was quoted as saying to a foreign dignitary that in the United States, if it moves, we tax it. If it does not move, we regulate it. And that's where we are.
Yeah, and it's not just regulation, but it's extortion of money because they're going to charge you for a flood zone check, and it's like several $100s just to see if you're in the flood zone. Well, around here, if you're living on a hill and it's 50 feet up from the valley, you're not in the flood zone, but you still have to go through that extortion that they take money from you for. You know, driver's license.
So what do we do?
Yeah, a driver's license is simply, a way for revenue. And of course, clear back even in the beginning of the country, there was the problem with the government and their revenuers going out. So people have a choice to make. They can actually say, listen, I'm claiming my birthright. There is a way that I can legally, because we have a legal government, we don't have a lawful government. I can't say that we can do anything lawfully with the government because they aren't lawful. So, I just want them to legally leave me alone. That's all.
I think that's what everyone who is in class with us today wants. We all just want to be left alone. We don't want to beat people up. We don't want to pollute our property and have it run down into our neighbor's property. We want to be good stewards of the land. We want to do what the Boy Scouts would do, which used to do, would be leave it better than we found it. That's what we want to do. And we don't want to cause problems for our neighbors. We don't want to have loud noises. We don't want to steal their property. We don't want to shoot their animals. We want to be left alone. And I'm sure that everyone in class today feels exactly the same way. So what do we do? Yeah.
Well, the founder said this country was only designed for a self-governing people. And so, we each personally have to decide what we have to do, what is right, what is wrong. I don't want to tear the country down. This is an actual peaceful way to do what should be done. They cannot be ignored. 1,200 people do this. How are they going to ignore it? And there will not be any, non-disclosure agreement. No. This is for everyone, for those that want to do it, and for everyone to see. And so that makes me excited. I'm off the wall excited.
So what is the procedure?
The procedure is first go to the website and do some research. We're not going to hold your hand through this. We will answer questions, but this is for people who want to be responsible. If you have a problem with your neighbor, you shouldn't be going to the police. You should go to your neighbor first. You should be responsible to communicate with him. So this is for people who will accept accept that responsibility that comes with freedom. With freedom, you must be responsible. And people aren't responsible. They don't want to be responsible for anything today. So, go to a website. I've had some people say, I want to opt in, and they'll say, they'll ask me a bunch of questions, and it's like, wait a minute, you didn't read anything, And so I tell them, listen, you go back and you learn, you see what this is about, and make an intelligent decision. So, basically, it's contract law. The government was defaulted in their contract. A new contract was offered. They accepted the new contract. And when they wouldn't go to conflict resolution with us, we simply had to go to an arbitrator. And again, this was done on behalf of all people. And so they get an opt-in form. There's instructions. They simply say that they want to opt into this contract. I'll just call it J316. It comes from the Bible, from the book of John. It's a little longer than that, so I'm not going to read it off. But they simply will be opting into that contract. Again, the deadline is December 25th. We will be going to Congress January 7th. I will be there in a camper. I won't leave until we have the settlement. They have to settle with us. It is an order. It just simply has to be hammered out. So, people will be notified by the website through announcements of what to do, how to do it, how to talk to your congressman, how to make sure you're opted in. I can't be responsible for 1,200 people being opted in. We will present the information to the government. Their opt-in documents, which are actually done by email. And that's very important. They're supposed to mail me the physical papers, but they're supposed to email the scan, which actually goes to the state of Washington. And from that scan, they will be presented to the government as opt-ins. And they don't need to be sending me certified mail. I have to go sign for tons of certified mail, and I don't care. That's fine. But, most of us in we'll call it the patriot or resistance or freedom movement, we're of limited means because we probably put everything we own into this. Our adversaries, money is no problem for them. So we have to beat them on principles. We have to beat them on being tenacious, not giving up, telling the truth, being transparent. I'm transparent. When I have Bible study here at the house, and tomorrow I'll be doing a special 1 hour live stream. The announcement is on my website. It's open to the public. Anyone can come to my house. I'm trusting that the Lord's going to protect me, because if He didn't, it would probably already be over.
Phil, do you get threatened?
Just in some emails, things like that.
I've been threatened too. That's why I asked you. Been threatened via emails, but I stopped that because I took down my email accounts. I took down all the email accounts that end in at usaprepares.com, and I took down the website because I've been threatened. But that doesn't mean I'm going to stop. That just means I'm not going to listen to these guys.
Well, they don't. They won't usually come to you face to face and do that because they're cowards.
I've invited them to come on the air with me. I set aside a whole week, and I said, we'll pay for the call. All I have to do is call, and if you want to have it out with me, let's do it. We'll do it on the air live. And these trolls just didn't have whatever it takes to come on the air and debate or discuss. So you're right. They are cowards. So when you say we are of limited means and we don't need to go to the police and do it ourselves, that's exactly what we do here at the farm. So when we first moved here, this was known as a hunting area. Lots of deer, lots of wild animals. And people from all around would come and hunt right on this road. And we got sick of them shooting from the road, illegally hunting, from their trucks, shooting our animals on our property. And so we just decided that we would interview them. So we set up a little station at the beginning of the road, and we just welcomed everybody down that was coming down the road with their blaze orange and their orange hats and their rifles, and we just said, "So, what's up? What are you doing?" And they would say, "Well, we're going hunting," and then we'd say, "Well, just want to let you know that the people," and we would have AR-15s and automatic handguns. And we'd say, well, the people who live on the right side of this road, they really don't appreciate that. As a matter of fact, it will really upset them if you hunt on that side for a mile. By the way, that would be us. And the guys down the road a little farther, that would be us. And the guys down the road a little farther than that, that would be us. And the others that you can't see, that would be us too. So have a nice day. And you know what? They stopped. They stopped plinking from their trucks, and they found some other easier pickings. So that's what we do, and I'm sure that's what you're talking about. Now, we didn't have a war with them. I mean, it could have ended up that way. It could have ended up being a nice bloody skirmish, but it didn't. But we just explained to them what we expected, and what we let them make the decision as to what they would do. And they just went away.
Yeah.
And hardly anybody comes here anymore.
You confronted the problem head on, and that's what a lot of people like about President Trump. You know, I don't like everything he does. I'm amazed at some of the things he does, and no one is ever going. I don't even agree with myself all the time. Okay, but he was so out front and tackling tough topics head on that people said, wait a minute, this is different. This is not political BS. And I am not politically correct. I am the most politically, well, maybe not the most, but I'm up there in the top. Well, according to the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, which, you know, they said I was one of the dirty dozen candidates back in 2014. So they definitely said I was on a bad guy, a bad dude.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. We'll be back with Phil Hudok, hudok.info, HUDOK.info. Phil Hudok, hudok.info. Class, I think you'll find it quite an interesting read. hudok.info, HUDOK.info. So, Phil, what we're talking about is being responsible for our own actions, not harming our neighbors, either personally or their property, being good people, kind of like the golden rule, do unto others, and taking care of your friends and family and helping when you can. That's what we're talking about, right?
Amen.
Not calling the government, not calling 911, for every little thing. Okay.
Right. They've turned people against each other by this police state.
Our daughter went the farthest in the public training camp. My dad was right after World War II, he became a teacher. That's what he wanted to do. And so he was a classroom teacher, and then he received a position as a teaching principal. So he had a school where he taught and was the principal. So it was a small school. And so my family was in the public education arena. And when I was a computer consultant, and I would be in the classrooms, and I would see what the teachers were teaching, and I thought, we've got to get our children out of here. Mm-hmm. So our daughter, the oldest, made it all the way to the 6th grade. One of our sons made it all the way to the 4th grade, and one of them never went to the public training camp until he decided he wanted to try it for the first time in high school here in Missouri. And our daughter came home from school saying that she was told that if you have a problem, like mommy and daddy are fighting, or if there's an argument, I don't mean fighting with, physically harming each other, I mean just discussion, that what you do is you call 911. And I said, never call 911. Never. Mommy and daddy aren't going to fight, but never call 911. And I said, here's what happens. So when the police show up, both mommy and daddy will be involved in a domestic dispute, according to the police, and they will lose their ability to own a firearm in that state if they consider themselves subject to the state rules and laws. I said, never call 911. So it seemed to me that what the public training camp was doing was telling the children to call 911, and that will get more guns off the street. That's how I saw that.
Oh, sure. They were just intruding on the sovereignty of the family, and to destroy society, you do it through the family. That's the functioning unit of society is the family. So they, these social engineers that want a new world order, they don't want families. H.G. Wells wrote a book called The New World Order, and he was against monogamy. He believed that husbands and wives should have any number of partners they want.
It doesn't work so well. It doesn't work so well.
No.
And the lack of morals is clear that's where we're headed. Just looking at the green hair, the blue hair, the orange hair, the red hair, Kool-Aid red. You can see that we're in decline, rapid decline, accelerating at an accelerating rate. Yeah, I'm with you. So we go to hudok.info, start reading, start learning, and if a person wants to opt in, what does that mean? What do they actually do?
They simply fill out a paper with that intention. They scan the paper and send the scan to an email address, and then they mail me the papers. But again, I want them to do their due diligence and do their homework. Find out what they're getting into, because I don't want non-responsible people. It's like giving a toddler a gun. I don't want that. But we're on a dead-end road right now. I don't know if the country can be turned around, but you still do everything you can to protect yourself and do what you can for your brother, because we are our brother's keeper, and that's my spiel. So I'm sure the question is coming up for those of us who are in our 65 plus group age bracket. What about Social Security? Will people stop receiving if they opt in? Will they stop receiving Social Security? Social Security, Medicare, government pensions, those will continue as is, simply because those were extractions of your time and your work and your money, and so they still have to honor that contract, that part of the contract. So that is something that will not be negotiated away. I have to agree, and the other four have to agree with the final settlement, and that will not be something that we would ever give away. How about real estate taxes, property taxes? No taxes whatsoever to any government entities. Zero. We're talking about sales tax. We're talking about property tax, personal property tax, license plate fees, licenses, no driver's license, right? You got it. All of them. Yeah. Phil, if you'd like to come back, just let me know, and we'll have you back again and again. And with your camper out there in Washington, it'd be great if you have a phone and we can call and let everybody know what's happening real time. I will be live streaming. I can live stream. There you go. Thank you, Phil Hudok, hudok.info. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. This hour is just me. And if you'd like to join me, we'll pay for the call, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. I'm going to be talking about some of the tips that I have compiled, things that I've done over the years, things that may save you a little time, a little money. Maybe you might find this a better way to do things. These are the ways that I have found that work best for us, our family. But please don't believe anything I say. Please research and determine if you want to do it this way. And the reason I'm saying that is if you get hurt or something goes awry,
Please don't blame me. I'm just sharing with you the way we do things. We have tall ceilings in most of our farmhouse, very tall. Some are up 20 feet, some are a little higher. And changing light bulbs is a problem. I mean, 10-foot ladder, and then how do you reach 20 feet on a 10-foot ladder? So we bought a light pole extension for bulbs. And it comes with, it's collapsible. So the collapse height might be 5 feet. It costs about $20. And there are different kinds of baskets that you can attach to the end. So different accessories. So for floodlights, the standard Edison bulb size, and so forth. And what we do is we extend it, lock it, because it's a twist lock, and you extend it to the height you want. And then you reach up there with an empty basket on the end of this pole. Then you unscrew the bulb, and then you lower it, take out that bulb, and you put in the replacement bulb, and you screw it back in. And that's what you can do. So if you decide that you've got incandescent light bulbs that are high, hard to reach, whether they're in a barn or a garage or wherever they may be, if they screw in, you may want to get one of these light pole collapsible, expandable reach devices. They're about $20, and we have one because we have a lot of can lights. Sometimes they're called recessed lights, but that's how we change the bulbs in those. I have a Sears Craftsman dry cell and battery tester, and I'll give you the model number. You can get one of these on eBay. There may be a newer type model, but the one that I have is a model, Craftsman model 82307. And it's a really neat little device. It will test pretty much every size battery you could possibly have at your home. From little button batteries to the AAA, AA, C, D cells, 9 volts, 3-volt lithium, 12-volt, 6-volt lantern batteries, and photo batteries. Test them all. It's about $10. Now, the problem with batteries is, I'm using the term generically, I really probably mean dry cell in most cases. But the problem with them is that you may have 2 or 3 that are used together, but one of them may be weak. So you end up throwing all 3 of them away. But you may only need to replace 1 of the 3 or 1 of the 4, or maybe all of the 4. So how do you know? Well, this tester will tell you. I've had this darn thing for got to be 20 years now or more, and you can still get it on eBay. It's the Sears Craftsman dry cell and battery tester model 82307. It has a moving needle, so it's not digital, and it works great. It doesn't take any electricity to test the battery. So what I'm saying is there's no battery or dry cell that powers this thing. It just works on the cell that you're testing. I'm going to give you a family recipe for pasta and noodles. It's kind of neat. It's very easy to do, and we all love it. As a matter of fact, it was Frank Sinatra's favorite pasta dish. So if you cook your pasta noodles, I'm just talking about regular spaghetti, standard thickness spaghetti. You cook that, and you add some extra virgin olive oil, fresh garlic, and you can buy a can of diced tomatoes and chilies, or diced tomatoes with chilies. And that's it. And you can put on warm or hot pasta, thin spaghetti if you'd like. You can have pour on the extra virgin olive oil, fresh garlic, diced tomatoes and chilies. And if you want a little more spicy, you can add some crushed red pepper. What a great dish. Very inexpensive, delightfully tasty, and I think you'll be impressed. We at the farmhouse like it. Easy to do. As a matter of fact, when I make pasta, I will cook a pound of it at a time, but we may not eat a pound of it at a time. So we have those Tupperware containers, or Rubbermaid. And when the pasta's cool and drained, I'll add it to one of those Rubbermaid type containers and put it in the refrigerator. It'll keep several days. So I may take some out later and have a small plate of pasta. And I may I'll olive oil on there, or spaghetti sauce that I made, traditional type spaghetti sauce with ground beef. But what I'm saying is you can keep spaghetti noodles in the refrigerator if you'd like. When it comes to making hamburgers, we will take ground beef. Now, I suggest if you're going to buy it, I'm not suggesting that you buy it. I'm suggesting that if you can find a source like we have, which would be cows walking around on our farm that are eating just grass. No additives, no growth hormones, none of that. If you can find a source like that, that's great. But if you can't, and if you're going to buy chopped meat, if you buy the 5-pound package when it's on sale, that's the best way to go. But what we do is we'll take some BPA-free freezer bags, sandwich size, and we'll scoop out with a spoon chopped meat, and we'll put it in the corner of the inside of that freezer bag. And then we will flatten it out inside the bag. Now, it does not have to be round. It can be, square. It can be an irregular, rounded, squared type shape. It really doesn't matter. I like them really thin. Like McDonald's thin? That's what I don't like fat hamburgers. So what I do is I'll take maybe 1/4 pound. I'll put it in that BPA freezer bag on the counter that I've just sterilized, and flatten it out, squeeze out the air, seal the bag. Then I'll take a bunch of those, maybe 20 of them, maybe 10, and I'll put them in a gallon-size freezer bag, and I'll put them in the freezer flat. And then when we need to take out hamburgers, or want to take out hamburgers, they're frozen, they're ready to go, and we can cook them however we want to cook them. That's what we do. It saves money. You'll save about 25% when you do it this way over buying chopped meat or ground beef by the 1-pound tray if you buy the 5-pound tray. And you'll save even more by making your own hamburgers rather than buying those discs of preformed hamburger patties at the meat department at your favorite supermarket. When it comes to wall plates, I'm jumping all over because the notes that I have jump all over. I just write down these thoughts as I have them. I've got a stack of notebooks with these type of notes in them, so I'm just going down the list here. I try to label the wall plates with a very, very fine, sharp marker as to what the circuit is. So, for example, in our kitchen we have multiple circuits. There are at least 4 circuits in the kitchen. So I label them 1, 2, 3, and 4. But I put the letter K for kitchen in the labeling system I have. So K1 is kitchen circuit number 1. K2 is kitchen circuit number 2. K3, kitchen circuit number 3. And inside the plastic box, or the metal box, whichever it may be, in the wall, I will write, when I install the wiring, what that circuit is. So at the bottom of that box, inside where you can't see it, I'll write K1 or K2 or K3. On the wall plate, I'll write very small so I can see it, what the circuit is. So if I plug in something to that receptacle and it doesn't work, I just look at that wall plate and say, oh, that's K1. I'll go to the breaker panel and I'll look at K1 and I'll see if K1 is tripped. That gives me a really fast way of finding out what's going on. You may want to do it, but everyone I've mentioned it to says it's ugly and, why do it? But if you go into any well-run, well-organized commercial site, all their outlets are labeled. Everything's labeled because they'd never be able to figure out what was what after if they didn't label them. So every circuit's labeled at the breaker panel, and every outlet is labeled on the wall, and the lighting is labeled. So what we did in our house was we separated overhead lighting from wall outlets. So all of the overhead lighting is on an independent circuit from all the other circuits. So, for example, the living room lighting, it's all by itself. Kitchen lighting, all by itself. So we can, if we wanted to, at any time, we could say, you know what, let's go to 12-volt lighting. We could, because we could disassemble that wiring circuit for the overhead lighting in the living room, for example, and we could convert that to 12 volts if we wanted to by pulling the wires out of the breaker panel, because it's not connected to any other outlets. It's only that particular circuit. So you may want to consider doing that. When I spackle, I do it a little differently. So if I'm taping sheetrock and finishing sheetrock, typically what you do is you have paper tape. Sometimes the paper tape has holes in it. It's about 2 inches wide. And it comes on a roll, 100 or 200 feet long, something like that, maybe even longer. And you apply spackle to the joint, and then you put the paper tape on it, and then you take the spackle knife, and you wipe away the excess. Well, I add one more step, because I found over the years that doesn't work so well. So what I do is I do everything the same, except I have a small tray with water in it. And I will dip the paper tape in water, and I'll wet it. And the spackle adheres so much better to the previously wet tape. And so, but I don't want this tape to drip all over. So I will seesaw it through the water tray, and then I will squeegee out the water between two of my fingers. So let's say with my right hand, I'll grab the end of the wet tape. With my left hand, I'll use my 2 fingers, and I'll pull the tape through it, and my 2 fingers will act as a squeegee and squeeze the water, most of the water, off the tape. And it works great. And when I do that, I don't have any trouble with the spackle tape peeling off the wall. And if you look around most houses, you'll see that the tape has bubbled and has come unattached to the spackle below the tape because it wasn't wet. So that's what I do. Nobody taught me that. I just figured that out, and I thought I'd share it. We'll be right back. So I thought I'd take a second hour on Fridays. In many cases, or if an instructor does not show up for whatever reason, scheduling conflict or some emergency, I take those opportunities to talk about some of these tips. So you can expect that many Fridays, hour number 2, that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so many years ago, I bought a commercial freezer. Well, it said commercial, but it was one of those white upright freezers, the kind that were sold by companies who would come door to door and say, hey, you can buy restaurant quality food for so much less. You just buy it from us. And people would say, well, I don't have a freezer. And they say, well, no problem. We'll sell you a freezer. So I have a feeling these freezers were bundled into the package price, and I have a feeling they cost somewhere between, let's say, $800 and $1,000. And then after a while, the people who bought this food delivery service products found out that it really wasn't working so well. So they ended up with a freezer, and it was a big freezer, way bigger than most people would have, and they would sell them on Craigslist for about $200. So I bought one, and then I decided that, if this thing ever quits, we'll have a problem because we'll have all that food in it. So let's get another one. So we bought 2 of them at 2 different times, one in Virginia and one out here in Missouri. And you won't find these things in rural Missouri. You'll have to go to like a big city where they'll be sold on Craigslist. You won't find them in the middle of nowhere because people don't sell things like that in the middle of nowhere, and they don't buy products like food delivery service. They get their own food. So you'll have to go if you decide to buy one. So what we bought was an Imperial commercial freezer. That's what it's marked. It's all white, manual defrost. And a manual defrost freezer uses less electricity than a frost-free, by far less. All right, but you'll have to defrost it. So if you have one of these things, you're going to want to have it in a place where you can just open the door, take the food out, put the food someplace where it won't defrost, and then let it drip, drip, drip for hours, maybe half a day. So a garage might be a good place, or if you have it on, what we do is we buy these rollers. So each one of our refrigeration devices for food, like a freezer or a refrigerator, they have these rollers that we've installed. They're about $20 or less. You can get them on eBay, get them on Amazon. They're made by a company called Shepherd. And they've got a whole bunch of little rollers. And you lift up your refrigerator or your freezer, you put the rollers under it, then you can move it forward or backward. You can't twist it around, but you can go forward or backward. So you can, the plan is you can clean the coils on the back, get the dust out from underneath it, dust the back of it, wipe it off, wash it, whatever you want to do. Or if you have if you want to manually defrost it, you can roll it to a position where it can drip, drip, drip. You can hook up a garden hose and let it drip outside. So that's the kind of freezer that we have. So that's a discussion about the freezers. But here's what happened. We decided that we were going to turn one of our cows into meat. What happened was one of our cows got out and she was blind. And she walked down the road and ended up in a neighbor's farm. And the neighbor said, that's okay. Don't worry about it. And we had a tough time catching her because she was blind. And she would run off, and we can't run as fast as a cow. You just can't do it. And it's really not good for the cow to have the cow crash into the fence and get torn up by barbed wire. So we decided that there's no way we could get this cow home easily. Then the neighbor advised us that you need to get your cow out now. That was a big problem for us. So neighbor offered us $150 or $100 for the cow. That was about 15 cents a pound. And we decided, no, we're not going to do that. So we killed the cow and took the cow back home because we were pressured into, you got to get the cow off our field now. Cow wasn't hurting anything. It wasn't a problem, but we were kind of pressured into doing it. So no problem. We'll just take care of it. So now we have the cow, and we needed a place for the cow. And our freezers were full. So I decided to try another type of freezer, a chest freezer. Found one on the internet for $150, and it was about 35 years old. It was a Kenmore, which is really Frigidaire. This particular Kenmore was a Frigidaire. Not all Kenmore appliances are Frigidaire, but for the most part, if you have a vintage type Kenmore, it was probably best in class. Really. So we bought this chest freezer. I'll tell you a little bit more about it, and I'm going to compare chest freezers with upright freezers when we come back. So, class, we're talking about meat, and we're talking about freezers, upright versus a chest freezer. So which is the best? Well, we've had both. And let me tell you the differences and what our opinion is. So we had an Imperial commercial freezer, manual defrost, cost $200 used. It's great. Really fabulous. But the problem with those upright freezers is the door gasket. They seem to deform over time and they leak. So in order to get ours to work properly, we would have to take one of those ratchet straps, and we buy a lot of them. We probably have 40 or 50 of them here at the farm. Those orange ones at Harbor Freight when they're on sale for $9.99 for 4 or $7.99 for 4. And we would have to use that to gently keep the freezer door closed because it would leak, and then we'd have frost build up where the air leak was around the door. So you can do that if you're going to keep one in for seldom or occasional use. But so when we killed this cow and we butchered the cow and turned it into meat, we thought, well, we're going to need some more freezer because the 22 cubic foot was full, the upright. So we bought a 23 cubic foot chest freezer. Now that's a very large chest freezer by any standards. It was 35 years old or so. It was a Kenmore, and it was manual defrost. It has 3 baskets, so you can slide these baskets with lightweight things like butter and packages that you might use more often. You put in the top of the baskets, things that you're going to use less often. You can put in the bottom. Well, we put the whole cow in this 23 cubic foot chest freezer, and we couldn't believe how much space we had left over. So we thought, in order to save electricity, let's take everything that'll fit out of the 22 cubic foot upright freezer and put that in the chest freezer. It all fit. And we had more room left over. So what I'm saying is we fit everything, and it was jam-packed. It was well organized. The upright freezer was well organized. And it was jam-packed. we took and put a whole butchered cow into a 23 cubic foot chest freezer, and everything that was in the 22 cubic foot upright freezer, and still had room in the 23 cubic foot freezer. So from an efficiency perspective, I've got to tell you that I believe that the chest freezer is the way to go. Because when you open it up, the cold doesn't come running out the door. It stays in there because cold does not rise. Hot rises. So you'll have to defrost it less often. The gasket works really well because the weight of the door keeps the gasket sealed better. So the gasket on this thing is 35 years old, the freezer's 35 years old, the compressor's 35 years old, and it is immaculate and it works beautifully. Now, of course, we sterilized it with chlorine, and we washed it outside with a garden hose and scrubbed it with detergent and let it bake in the sun, and it is absolutely awesome, and it was $150. So if you have the room, I suggest you consider a chest freezer, if you have the room. But before you buy one, look at the gasket around the perimeter and make sure it wasn't abused. So the one we bought for $150, it was $150 because nobody really wanted it. It's too big. Too big for everybody else besides us. And we were delighted to buy it. We did not negotiate the price down. That was the asking price. We thought it was fair, and it took a truck to get it home. Two guys just picked it up, lifted it on the truck. And by the way, I looked at that. I looked at some of the big box stores. They're still selling that same freezer. But it doesn't come with 3 baskets anymore. It's new and improved, and now you only get 1 or 2. But you can buy extra baskets for $50 a piece. And that freezer, thinner, cheaper, smaller compressor, less durable, is $1,000. Plus the baskets if you want extra baskets to have 3 the way we do. And they used to come with 3 baskets, but I guess the accountants got involved and said, you know what, we can still sell these and people won't realize that we took 1 basket or 2 baskets out. And we'll sell the baskets as an option. Can you imagine that? Lighting. To me, my favorite kind of lighting is fluorescent lighting for the work area. In our shop, it's fluorescent lighting. In the previous studio that I had at the farmhouse, it was fluorescent lighting right up on the ceiling, way up, like 15, 16 feet up. And I used, believe it or not, you never even noticed it, but in our dining room, I took 2 fluorescent shop lights. And this can sound tacky, but anybody who's walked into the dining room never even saw them because they're up so high. I took 2 fluorescent lights, and we have beams in a lot of the house. So I got some 2x4s. I mounted just regular shop lights, reflector shop lights, to these beams. I painted them the same ceiling white that the ceiling was painted, and I attached them to beams, stretched between 2 beams. And I changed the ballast from a cheap, noisy ballast. I bought some ballast on the internet, eBay. Bought maybe 6 ballasts for 4-foot fluorescent lights. And they're very quiet. Very quiet. They don't hum. And when I power these lights on, it doesn't go boing. Very smooth. And I changed the bulbs to warm white. And there are plenty of different colors of warm white. But I bought a case of warm white bulbs that I liked. So I have enough ballast and enough bulbs to last a lifetime because I like them. Now, they're not as efficient as LED lighting. So the worst efficiency would be like an incandescent bulb. Then using about a quarter of the electricity of an incandescent would be a fluorescent for the same amount of lumens. And then even more efficient is the LED. But I don't like the LED in many cases because if they're not filtered, if they don't have a plastic opaque filter around them, what happens is you have point light sources, and they bother my eyes. I'd rather have a smooth, even light across a large area, like a fluorescent tube, as compared with these point source LED lights. I don't like the LED light for that particular reason. Now, we do have LED lights in our house. Lou Cassidy gave us some LED lighting, and we use them in the can lights. So it's at a distance. But for overhead work in the shop, I prefer fluorescent lighting. And fluorescent lighting right now is really cheap. Why? Because it's not new. It's old, and LEDs are cool, and you can have LEDs running on less electricity. But in my opinion, for detailed work, I prefer the fluorescent light because it's a more even lighting. Let's try something we haven't done very often. I see that we have a call. I don't know who's calling. Hi, I'm Vin Finelli. You're on the air. Anybody home? Hello? I guess not. So I just put that person back on hold. I have a call screen here, and I can take calls. I can see when the phone's ringing in Minnesota at GCN. I can see all the telephone lines, and I can answer them. I can put them on hold, or I can drop the call. Okay, so that person's on hold, and that person can hear everything that's going on. So we'll try again later. All right. So we talked about fluorescent lighting and why I like it. Now, most fluorescent lighting would be cool white, and it's kind of a bluish color. I don't like it so much. Now, for working in the shop, it's okay, but for working in the house, I don't like it so much. And if you have little defects in your wall, little bumps and dimples and imperfections, if you use a cool white light, you will see them more than if you use a soft, rosier color light. So I just want to make that remark. When I change my oil, I use a drain pan, and it holds about maybe 15, 16 quarts, something like that. The best oil drain pan that I've ever used for automotive purposes is made by a company called Chilton. And I don't know if you can get very many of these anymore. It might be tough to find them. And it's model P, as in Peter, 3, the number 3, P3. And what's great about this particular one, it costs about $16. It's black plastic. It's sealed, which means that it's not open for the oil to run into. It's not like a pan. It's like a container. And it has a center drain hole in it. So in the center of this depression, where the oil would run to the bottom of this drain container, the oil will run into it, and you can then screw back in the cap and seal it up. It has a vent on one side and a pour spout on the other side, which is what it needs to have. If you look at some of the drain containers and drain pans that they sell at the automotive store, you'll see that the vent is not necessarily on the other side from the spout, which makes it very difficult to pour. So I like pouring without spilling oil. So when you buy a drain pan, I suggest that you consider getting one that is sealed so that it won't spill when you pick it up. And debris like leaves, if you don't empty it right away, won't get in there. If you leave your garage door open or something like that. And that you can pour it into a larger container and recycle it or keep it. Now, we don't recycle ours, we just keep it. We keep all the oil. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gallons of used oil. Because at some point, we may want to heat our home with that. And I'm not willing to give away oil that can be used for lubricating purposes to O'Reilly's or AutoZone or Walmart or wherever. Because that oil is just going to be sold to a company that uses the used motor oil, not for refining, but for use as fuel in ocean-going ships. So I'm going to keep the oil. And I let it settle, and after several months or even a year or more, that oil, the solids have settled down to the bottom. I carefully pour it out, and I can use it for lubricating purposes. Now, I wouldn't put it back in an engine, but I would for drilling holes and lubricating chains, like on a motorcycle or a dirt bike or a four-wheeler or the baler or whatever lubrication purposes I would want. Got plenty of it for that. Kyle in Montana, welcome.
Good morning, Vince. I was trying, when you tried to get me there earlier, I could hear you, but for some reason you couldn't hear me, and I checked my phone. I was not on mute.
Oh, okay.
Back to the freezers just for a second. It's kind of funny that you mentioned that, because I think of an upright freezer like a convenience store. you're going to pay more, but they take up less space and they're close. You can put them close by. And as far as the seal, the gasket goes, instead of a ratchet strap, what I did is those type of straps and latches that have a square kind of a loop that you pull, you let up, and then it goes over a hook on one side of the latch, and then you pull it backwards to pull it tight to latch it. I put 2 of them on our upright freezer, that the one that we get to more easily on our porch, then anyway, it just works really, really slick, and it tightens everything down real easy.
All right. Hold that thought. We'll be back with Kyle and Dean. Stay on the line, and we'll get to you as well. Kyle's with us. He's absolutely right. Dean's on hold. And Kyle, you're absolutely right. Back in the 60s, my parents had a freezer. Actually, it was a refrigerator. And we put it in the basement, and it was made in the 40s, and the gasket wore out, and it was tough to get parts, I guess. So I literally did what you did for that, drilled a couple holes in the side of the refrigerator and the door, and I made a latch that would kind of like just an inexpensive latch, and just push the door in, push the latch on, it would hold it tightly. So we've come up with similar solutions, and they work. And so if you want to buy a new gasket, you certainly can do that. The problem is a gasket is typically $40 for a cheap one. And if you want to buy the original equipment manufacturer's type freezer door gasket, you're talking $60 to $80 to $100. So that's the problem. And they do get harder over time. The magnets get weaker, and they don't work as well. So that's why Kyle and I did the same thing. We fabricated a quick workaround. So yeah.
You bet. The other thing is, if your chest freezer starts getting a bow to it, because I have seen many of those that they're great, and the gasket's okay, but the door itself somehow gets a bow to it. And I don't know how they're flat. That's mostly not on the old ones that are oval topped, but the ones that are flat. In order to keep the cold in and the heat from getting into them, and if you're in a pinch and you can't, figure out a way to get the bow out of it, just put a couple of 3 half-gallon or gallon jugs of water on the edges of it to keep the edge down. And even in the wintertime, only fill the jugs up about, half to 2/3 full, and it keeps enough weight on it so that everything stays sealed. Otherwise, wherever that air is coming into your chest freezer is going to freeze up with ice. It's just going to build up, and the moisture coming in there is going to continue to build up. And one last thing I'll throw out there, just because I know Dean's trying to get on here too. Don't underestimate, folks, the value of reflectors. In my shop, I have like 18-inch half. They look like the old China tops with one little light, and I use a 5200 Kelvin. I think that's what it is, or it could be a 41 LED light with those about 18 to 20 inch. I can't remember, but they're reflectors, and I put them up quite high, and I have 8 of them in the shop, and it lights it up like daylight. So anyway, that's just something. Don't underestimate the value of reflectors. And I'll let Dean catch on there too, Vince. But great show again. I love these Fridays when you do this. It's great.
Well, we can do them for quite a while. And Kyle, thank you for chiming in and sharing your expertise and adding exclamation points to the discussion. Thank you so much.
You bet.
That was Kyle. Dean in Kentucky, welcome.
Yeah, hello, Vincent. Excuse me, I would call you sooner, but I couldn't find my address book. I had to look all over the place. Well, anyway, talking about freezers, I've had my same Amana since the early 1970s, and we've taken it to this house, too, and then I bought a second Amana, a smaller one, that we've had a few years later. So it keeps on ticking.
Well, Amana was considered
back then.
Yeah, Amana was considered a great brand for a very long time. As a matter of fact, when my parents built their house in Virginia on the same farm as we had, that's what we chose for theirs. And it was just very, very well built, quality refrigeration.
Yeah. Okay, but I've got a central vac from the 1960s that I bought at a thrift store. There must have been a sample or something never used, but the only bad thing about that unit, it has a fabric, like a flannel bag that goes over the motor. It's a pain in the butt to clean.
Okay.
So I have to try to find a workaround around it.
All right. Since you mentioned that, I built a central vacuum system for our farmhouse.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And there was a hardware store that was going out of business. So they had the plumbing, the inlets, the wall inlets, the elbows, the T's, the Y's, all of that. Everything except for the hose, the power head, and the central vac unit itself, the vacuum. So I had all of the rough-in components, and I think it was $15. I couldn't wait to get rid of it. I was delighted. Maybe it was $45, but it was not a lot of money.
Yeah, well,
we roughed it in.
Over the years, yeah, different houses.
What we did was we roughed it in, and in the early days, I didn't want to spend the $1,000 or whatever the central vac unit would cost. So I hooked ours up to a shop vac, and you can do that. And you can turn on the shop vacuum and use it as a central vacuum. I bought on eBay the hose, 35-foot long hose, and the power head, and it was from China. And the power head is junk, absolute junk.
Well, I don't use the power head because I don't have carpeting.
The best power head I've ever seen is a Whisper belt from Sears Kenmore. Absolutely the finest. They last the longest, probably go for 20 years.
Sure.
So,
okay, well, thank you, Vincent.
Hey, thank you.
Bye-bye.
And there are two main types of central vacs. One is a bagless, and the other's with a bag. And I decided we'd go with the bagless, and we have like a 6-gallon or so bucket that we just empty out. No bags. Better way to go. But you have to ventilate it outside because you will be having small particles of dust coming out of the vacuum unit. Thanks so much for being with us, class.